Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 216 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the second minute podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, as always, is the radiant being herself. She's amazing. She is the hostess with the mostest, Erin Paulette. How you doing?
Weer'd. Have you ever woken up after a day of a constant headache, and when you wake up, your back hurts, and you honestly aren't sure if you slept wrong or if your kidneys are aching because of all the NSAIDs you took?
I could say probably not. I would say if I ever woke up because my kidneys were hurting, I wouldn't think it was because of the NSAIDs. I might think that maybe I overdid it on the booze.
But... Yeah, but I'm not a professional alcoholic like you are. So yeah, that was my day because, I pretty much lost all last week due to, we're in peak hurricane season right now, and so that doesn't just mean rain. That means thunderstorms in the afternoon, and they're either pushing or pulling pressure fronts. And so that frequently results in very painful sinus headaches, with the occasional vascular one sprinkled in, just for whimsical giggles. Ugh. And then yesterday I think it started out as an eye strain, and then a sinus one compounded on top of it. And I had that sumbitch for like 8 hours. And it wasn't the worst I had, but it just hung on, and nothing would blunt it or make it go away, and I lost track of Tylenol and Aleve and Advil and freaking aspirin.
Were you crushing them and snorting them at this point? Just doing big old rock star lines of Advil?
You know, I was considering breaking out the old NyQuil and just doing shots of it in the hopes that it would knock me out. I didn't take all those things at once, but yeah, it was like, okay, I've been in pain for however many hours. I don't know, let's try something else. So yeah, I woke up today blissfully no headache, which is great, but yeah, my back is sore, and I'm just wondering if this is the headache equivalent of a hangover, where it's just, my liver.
Well, I hope it's not, but I would imagine it's probably given the story that you've just told me, you might have a reason for there to be some tension in your body.
Yeah,
and that might result in some knotting of muscles.
I've got you doing it now. Oh, I'm horrible. So how are you doing, Weer'd?
I mean, I'm doing okay. There's been a lot of family drama going on these last few days. I'm trying to remember if I mentioned it on the show when it happened, but my father-in-law did finally pass away, which is sad, I guess, but honestly speaking, he was so sick and in such a bad place that it's really more of a relief than anything. But my poor wife is essentially just taking point on his final wishes, and between that and all in the fact that it's not like it's special, because at this stage in her career, like every week of her job is a critical moment, and so there's a lot of crazy stuff up in the air with her work, and so she has been just absolutely ragged, and I'm just doing the best I can to supply what support I can, and which is a lot, and so therefore I'm really tired as well, and then on top of that, you get to the point where, all right, you tuck your head down and you're getting a lot of work done, and then suddenly an 8-year-old girl walks in and goes, "I'm bored," and then starts doing bad things until you drop everything and go to a playground or go watch a movie.
Are you telling me you didn't engage in the dad joke?
Oh.
Hi, bored, I'm dad.
Yeah, you know what? That's my father used to pull that one all the time. I'm hungry. Nice to meet you, hungry. I'm dad. Yeah, that's not one of the ones I've got. I definitely get the what's up, and then I just point at the ceiling, and then I look really perturbed on the, you didn't know that? No, seriously, what's up? I just told you. and just keep pushing it. Like, no, I'm a dad. I can't turn it off. Oh, so yeah, no, it's been, it
sounds like there's insufficient up dog in your relationship.
But Aaron, what's up, dog?
Not much, dog. What's up with you?
It would cost a Henway to get that. Oh, leave me hang. Because Aaron is, of course, a genius. I told you she was radiant. Oh, so
Weer'd. Is a Henway imperial or metric?
You know what, Aaron? Dealer's choice. It could be whatever you want. I tend to deal with imperial Henways.
So how much would that be in hogsheads?
Now you're gonna see, Aaron. You know me too well. You know now I'm looking up how much a hogshead is. A hogshead is. Jeez, this is like the most confusing table on Wikipedia. Let's see. Hogshead, at least 550 liters or 121 imperial gallons. 145 U.S. gallons. Wait, there's different gallons?
Tonight on the Assorted Measurements podcast.
I love when people say Americans won't use the metric system. Like, the hell we don't. We just
use it for guns.
No, I use it for everything. I just made myself a bunch of martinis out of 1.75 liter bottles and 750 milliliter bottles and all that. We have 9mm and all that, but we also used 45 ACP and miles and Fahrenheit and all that system. Americans, we just have the freedom. We just pick and choose whichever one we want to use.
Like the fat electrician calls them freedom fractions.
Yes, freedom fractions. We're doing everything in twelfths. Yes, I will measure things in barnyard animals before I use the metric system. I think he also referred to tea as metric leaf water, which I greatly enjoy every time I have myself a fine cup of tea. Well, Aaron, shall we dive into the main topic?
Yeah, I think we've screwed around long enough.
Guys, so we got a couple of things. We don't need to dive too deep into a lot of those, but there is a bunch of court cases that are getting some movement. One is Granata v. Healey, which makes me very, very happy because, of course, Maura Healey is our current Attorney General and aspiring governor of Massachusetts. We will see how well she does. Boy, I'm following the politics and it's a mess. But yeah, she was sued back in June of last year for the Massachusetts handgun roster. So for those that don't know, I believe the only states that have it are California, Massachusetts, and Maryland. I don't think there's any other states that have handgun rosters. I did a quick search, and those are the only ones that came up. But in Massachusetts, gun companies must submit guns for testing of various things such as drop safety, trigger weight. I try to remember if they do a melting point thing. I think California does that, but they make sure essentially that you can't have any Zamac in your gun. And various things and features such as Massachusetts requires a loaded chamber indicator. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on that list. But essentially, if the gun meets all of the standards, only then will the Attorney General either give or deny their blessing. And there is no rhyme or reason for it. It is just on their whim. So Glock has submitted every single gun that they have ever had, and it has passed with flying colors because, of course, it's Glock. They make good guns. And there's not a single Glock that is approved for Massachusetts sale to civilians. So, but damn near.
So just to reiterate, they submit everything. Everything they submit passes, but they still aren't approved.
That is correct.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like... What? Oh, there's a technical term that I'm probably going to butcher, but it's something like unfair something under the law.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly what you're referencing, but it's the Bravo Sierra. It got so much that I believe both reps from Taurus and from Springfield both sat down with the Attorney General's office. At this point in time, it was probably still Tom Riley, who was the Attorney General who unveiled this, and actually sat down and said, and tried to get them to say, if we submit a gun and it passes all of these tests, that means we get an approval, right? And they would at no point say yes, because no, it doesn't. You can pass everything. You can make a gun that exceeds every single test, and it still won't necessarily pass. And the approval is done for the SKU. So one of the ones that I liked to point out is the Smith & Wesson M&P is an approved firearm, but the Julie Golob edition Smith & Wesson M&P, which is simply a Smith & Wesson M&P with a custom engraving on the slide, and rather than the black interchangeable back straps, a pink one is there, and a portion of the money goes to breast cancer, some sort of breast cancer charity. And
probably Susan Komen, March for the Cure.
Yeah, probably one of those. But essentially, it's got a little pink ribbon on the slide. It probably has a JG prefix or suffix on the serial number, and there might be Julie Golub's signature on it. I'm trying to remember it. I mean, I don't think they don't make them anymore. But that one is not allowed, and the only difference, of course, is there's a little bit of engraving, and it's got a pink backstrap. But that's a different SKU. So same thing goes with if a 1911.
Oh, okay. When you say SKU, you are literally giving the 3-letter abbreviation SKU.
Correct.
Which stands for, it's something, I know it has to do with stock inventory.
Correct. It is. Literally, when you open up a catalog and there's a part number for that gun, and whether you're getting the 1911 with the black rubber grips or the 1911 with the rosewood grips, they're the same gun, but the SKU will be off by one or two numbers.
See, when you said SKU, I thought you said SKEW, and it made no sense to me.
Yes. But yeah, so it's literally if there is a different part number for that gun, then it is 5 of them need to be submitted to the testing lab for destructive testing. You don't get them back. And
well, I mean, you said melt point. I mean, that sounded like they really did.
Oh yeah,
we're going to put them in the oven and see at what point they turn to liquid.
Yes. So yeah, I'm trying to remember if that is actually one of the ones. It's hard to find the actual testing standards because they also keep that quiet. And of course also because it's Massachusetts, this of course was created by the Attorney General. Of course, the Attorney General has no power to create law, and it is stated, "Oh no, this is not a gun control law. This is a consumer protection law. This is preventing Massachusetts gun owners from getting their hands on guns that are unsafe." Never mind that guns are insanely safe, whether we're talking about your super duper cheap high points or super duper high end 1911s and other guns. They're all safe. They're all fine. But no, Massachusetts, it needs to be extra safe. And of course the cops get to have them. And once you get your hands on them, then it's all done. But it only applies to federal firearms license holders in the state. They will, so they can't sell me that gun. But, once that gun's around, then it can be transferred.
Translation, once a cop has bought it and then has flipped it for a profit.
Correct. Or somebody moves into the state with one, or somebody passes away and it gets transferred to you, then you could get it. Like my father-in-law has a Glock, had a Glock, and his wife is holding on to it. So the possibility that I may have gotten my hands on a 4th gen Glock in the state of Massachusetts, and then also it being technically a family heirloom, so therefore flipping it would feel kind of icky, but I could have flipped it for a lot of money.
I'm honestly surprised that you're allowed to import them like that.
It's just only as part of a state. If it is part of a transfer of a state, it can come in that way. I would need to dump the magazines at the dealer, because the high capacity magazines do not get to be in my possession. But I can get an off roster handgun transferred to me if it is part of an estate.
Well, you did say something about moving there, and so it sounded like if you owned the gun, you could move in with it. You just couldn't buy one there.
Yes, but it means that you need to physically transfer residence and get a Massachusetts firearms license upon entering the state. It's not as simple as just someone coming across the border.
Well, I mean, I did get that,
Yeah.
but...
Yep. But yeah, and so this was all done as consumer protection. And of course, so like I said, it was filed in June of last year, but the important thing is that thanks to NYSERPA, oh my God, NYSERPA, you guys are amazing what you're doing for all of us. Thanks to NYSERPA, I don't know the legal term, but they've essentially woken the case back up, and they're asking for additional review on it under the new rules applied by NYSERPA, which clearly shows that this is complete junk. Because where in the history, specifically in the time between the ratification of the Second Amendment and the ratification of the 14th Amendment, at all has there ever been an instance where people were only allowed to buy certain guns that were dictated by the government? And it's also not as nasty as California's handgun roster. So if this case wins, then the lovely people in California will be free. It is.
That sounds like a segue, Weer'd.
Yes. So there's also news coming out of California, and yes, California is also having their firearms roster challenged, and theirs is just a complete mess, because I think no new guns have been added to California's roster in like a while.
Well, since 2013, because in 2013, they passed a ruling. Once microstamping became some degree of viable, and in 2013 it did, they said that before any guns can be added to the roster, they must have microstamping. And so, I mean, when I say viable, I mean they proved it was possible, not that it was at all effective or commercially profitable or even workable within a gun. But that's what happened. And so since then, no new guns have been added because gun manufacturers haven't added microstamping to their guns, because it's a big waste of time and money that accomplishes nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a huge problem also because I think in the testing that people have done towards microstamping finds that, number one, the stamping doesn't work because there's almost always going to be at least one illegible character in the transferred stamp, but also that after so many repetitions, the stamping is just going to be destroyed by just standard wear and tear. And so gun companies don't feel like forcing people to replace their barrel and firing pin every 500 rounds or so, whatever it takes before. Yeah, it just doesn't do anything anymore. So yeah, it is absolute garbage technology. It is also stuff that accomplishes absolutely nothing, because so what? There's going to be a serial number attached to it. California's got a gun registry. Massachusetts has a gun registry. New York has a gun registry. Name a case that they have solved because of the registry. This extra information that will tie a shell casing to a gun in the registry will do all the good that everything else has done. So yeah. So the California Rifle and Pistol Association is also attacking. It's Bonta. So it's CRPA v Bonta. On the California handgun roster, which, I mean, again, Massachusetts, at least there's been stuff going through. I've talked about like Taurus and Springfield. I think there might be Taurus and Springfield guns that I can get now in Massachusetts. Every time I come to the go to the shop, I'm always surprised at what I see. Like, you can get Canics here. That was a surprise. I did not think that those little Turkish pistols would ever make it onto the roster. I didn't think that they cared enough to actually submit it. And then furthermore, that they would approve a Turkish-made pistol.
Yeah, Canics are basically 1911 clones.
No, they're Walther P99s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they're clones of the Walther P99 with a few modifications.
I haven't had a whole lot of experience with the Canic. I did shoot one some years back, and the one thing that sticks in my mind is how aggressive their grip pattern was.
Oh yeah.
It was, well, I feel like if I say painful is a bit of an overstatement, but it was certainly not comfortable, especially when I'm holding it tightly, and then, the recoil, yeah, that dug in. That was spicy. And so it was like, yeah, I'm done, thank you.
I'm not
bleeding. I
will just say for vaguely, in case there are kids in the car, but a little bit of weird oversharing is there was a time in my life when I thought, hey, rib for her pleasure. That seems like a good idea. And we quickly learned that just means, no, we're just going to start a fire. So not painful, but please stop. So yeah, good luck to those guys, and then to get rid of the rosters, because especially as the co-host of Handgun Radio, that is one of those ones that, like, oh my God, do I want to see that go away? Because the number of guns that I just can't get, and like I'm so jealous at Oddball because there's a number of guns that are just dirt cheap that I wouldn't even need to worry about it. Like I've got the money like in the couch cushions to buy myself an Altor, but I can't. I want one so bad, it's so stupid. Oh, I want it. I don't have a high point. I want a high point so bad. I have a Jennings, and that was a pain in the butt to get because it's an off-roster Jennings. That was why I got it. I was like, oh my God, you have an off-roster Jennings? Yeah, I'll take that. What do you want for it? And I paid way too much for it. But is one of those ones of I couldn't easily get a hold of it. So that's what the market will bear. So yeah, that's one of those ones. But you know what's another thing that really chafes my butt here in Massachusetts is we have our assault weapons ban, which is total crap. It is awful, and it's being illegally enforced by Mara Healey. But there is a gun group that is also now suing to get rid of our assault weapons ban again because of NYSERPA v. Bruin. So yeah, come on, let's be honest. Any law that does not allow you to have an AR-15 or a Glock 17 with its full compartment of mag capacity is direct violation of the Second Amendment, because those are the gun brand guns. Those are just default. So
they're pretty much the definition of in common use at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, again, it's hilarious that I own neither a Glock nor an AR-15 pattern rifle. Like, that's just that is really just a testament to what a gun hipster I am.
Well, I mean, the Glock, I don't know, but the AR-15, you specifically said, and it has nothing to do with being a hipster. It's because you don't want Mara to suddenly decide you're a criminal for owning one and have you arrested.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's also, furthermore, again, we have the assault weapons ban, so I'd have to get myself a neutered AR-15. And like nowadays, like not only is the AR-15 just like the definition of in common use, but the M4 styled AR-15s with the 16-inch barrel and the multi-position stock is pretty much just the way they roll. There's very few fixed stock ARs out there, certainly in the oh yeah, I'll just buy one category. So again, we will see, as we've been seeing with all these cases, the states are playing shenanigans with trying to kick the can up the road, probably hoping that either the gun groups will give up or one of the justices that vote in favor of gun rights will pass away or retire and can be replaced by an anti-gun president. So they're trying just to drag their feet as much as they can and hope that it will just go away, which I don't think it will, because I did buy a 50-round drum magazine that's at my parents' house in Maine.
But yeah, after Bruin, it seems like all of the state-level gun groups have tasted blood. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, oh, all right, yeah, now let's try this stuff again. Because, well, 1, victory, and 2, we got the Supreme Court on our side. Let's strike now in case we have to elevate it up to that level again. And it's really heartening. And once again, I'm so happy that I played even just a tiny part in all that.
I mean, that is a big deal, Aaron. You were cited by a Supreme Court justice.
Well, no, I wasn't, but our group was, and that's the important thing.
So, moving on, this is more of an interesting story. Did you hear about this one, Aaron?
I did not. And this is the sort of thing that, well, on the one hand, you would think would be front page news, but yeah, then when we get into it, I can see why it was quietly squashed.
Yes. So yeah, this one, Las Vegas. What is his title?
It says a county official.
Yeah, public administrator, Clark County public administrator. His name is Robert Tellis. He was running for re-election, and a journalist by the name of Jeff German was reporting on him and found that his office was just a complete mess. There was a lot of morale issues. It is strongly believed that Mr. Tellis was having an affair with one of his staffers, and
accusations of favoritism. They don't come right out and say corruption, but it's very heavily implied.
Correct. And certainly Tellis believes that the reports that were coming out about his office being an absolute disaster
cost him the election, right?
Yeah, cost him the election. So he lost the election. He was very, very mad about it. And then a little while later, Mr. German was found dead in his home from multiple stab wounds. And
actually, point of order, he was stabbed to death outside his home.
Okay. Yep. And so, but he was stabbed to death on his property. And the various like doorbell cameras that have now become ubiquitous have a picture of a man in kind of a goofy outfit, wandering, going to the house and then wandering away from the house.
I've got it here in front of me. Mm-hmm. An individual in a long-sleeved orange T-shirt with reflective strips and a broad straw hat that covered the face.
Yeah, he kind of looked like a cross between a Vietnamese rice farmer and a Shaolin monk. Or no, the Tibetan monk. The Tibetan monks are the ones with the saffron robes. But and a little bit of the Hail Bop crazies, whatever that cult was called. But yeah, and then police suspected him and searched his home and found the shoes, the shirt, and the hat.
And the hat had been cut into pieces.
The shoe too.
That's not suspicious at all.
Yep, but not disposed of, which was, I mean, this is not a rocket surgeon here.
I mean, they don't say, but maybe he had cut them up into pieces and then put them in the trash.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
or something.
And I'd missed this earlier, but yes, but Mr. Tellis's DNA was found underneath German's fingernails, so they were tussling. And so, yeah, so he still needs his trial and all that, but boy, they've got a lot of evidence. They've got a lot of evidence. And,
okay, so Weer'd. I mean, this is, fascinating in a horrible train wreck kind of way, but what is it doing here on this podcast?
Oh, yeah, this does seem more like a story for an ACP mag dump, doesn't it? But, oh, I know. Mr. Tellis was horrendously anti-gun. So, just the...
Well, I mean, you've got to admire his commitment to principles, because he didn't shoot the reporter.
That is true. That is true. He did not use an icky gun. He used a knife. And as all anti-gunners will tell you, knife deaths, they practically don't count. So I don't even know why he's in jail. He only stabbed him to death. So...
it's not that horrible, awful gun death. It's good, wholesome knife death.
Yes, yeah. It's he's lying back and thinking of England. It's the British way. The Queen is looking down from heaven, very, very pleased with his English slaying. But this. Yeah, this guy was horribly anti-gun, was constantly calling for gun control. And you touched on one point that I think is very, very valid for ACP, is that it shows that guns not the only thing that's going to kill you. You ban all the guns, and I joked about England. England has a tremendous knife violence problem. They stab each other. And, even in places like Scotland, even back when you could still go into a gun shop and buy a gun in Scotland, they were still we'll just stab each other. It was their gun death rate was extremely low, even when guns were much more common there. But Scotland specifically has a horrible murder rate. But this also shows something that I see, again, not all anti-gunners, hashtag not all anti-gunners, but I have seen more than a few anti-gunners that seem to have this psychological projection in thinking that they have violent fantasies and ideations and a horrible temper, where they would be the type of person who would go and murder a reporter in cold blood while disguised, and for writing truthful stories about their corruption. They just assume that they're not abhorrent. They're not an odd person. That's how we all think. And so therefore, clearly we should ban all guns. Either that or violent criminals just, doing professional courtesy of no, don't shoot the violent criminals, because that would hurt me. And that's all I got to say about that. You still there, Aaron?
I'm still here. I do think Shaolin monks also wear saffron.
Oh, well, thank you, Aaron.
I mean, I see them in a bunch of different colors. Mm-hmm. So it may be a case of Shaolin monks sometimes do versus Tibetan monks always do. I'm not sure. I'm not ready to fall down this rabbit hole just yet, but I'm definitely seeing them in orange, because that's saffron, right? That's kind of an orangey.
Yep.
I don't know if it's an orangey yellow or yellowy orange, but
again, Aaron, you are showing just how feminine you are. I'm a guy. It's just orange. If it's not in like the basic 8-pack Crayola box, it ain't a color.
Yeah, my problem is that, okay, I can see the different colors, but I don't know what they're called. Is this violet or is this plum? It's like, okay, one's darker, slightly darker purple, slightly like lighter purple. But I didn't get that memo or that data upload. I don't have them all memorized.
My friend just repainted her house, and she had painted test patches all over the outside and was having us inspect them. And I'm like, literally, they are like almost the exact same color. And like one was called like milkshake, and one was they just had all like extremely goofy names.
Does she want to bring all the boys to her yard?
Yes, she does. And okay. And and then after they had it painted, one of our other friends was there, and he looked at it and goes, "Yep, it's greige." Which honestly, greige, yes. Which, I mean, it's one of those, like, that was the big argument. We just had our house resided, and I was trying to just like anything but make it beige. Like, there's just 1,000,001 different shades of beige, and like, I want a color. So we went with a...
Beige is the color.
Yeah. But I want a Crayola box color. So, well, we went with a bluish slate color. So that was our compromise.
Tonight, I'm cute as a button. Weer'd rambles and is annoying. And David talks about his favorite types of revolvers in a segment I'm calling Top Breaks.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In this segment, I'm going to take a break from all the recent legal stuff to explore the world of another break, the classic break-top pocket revolver. A type of firearm that's often neglected in collecting circles, but is dear to me. Cartridge pocket pistols first appeared after the granting of the Rollin White patent in 1855. In 1857, Smith & Wesson, the holder of that patent, introduced their tip-up model number 1, chambered in .22 short. After the patent finally expired, dozens of companies started manufacturing cartridge pocket pistols. Some were solid frame, but the top break design quickly swept the market. In the 1880s, a gentleman would rarely venture out without wearing a vest and jacket. Frequently, they would carry a small revolver in one of the pockets for self-defense. While many of the pocket pistol companies were referred to as suicide specials due to their poor quality, and most of them came and went along with their products, there were some exceptions. The following 3 companies are noteworthy examples. Following the success of their large-frame Model 3 American and Russian break-top revolvers, Smith & Wesson designed a smaller caliber double-action break-top revolver in 1872. However, commercial production of the .32 double-action second model didn't start until 1880. They manufactured nearly 1 million of them in several different variants and calibers between 1880 and 1919. Harrington and Richardson produced several different double-action break-top revolvers from 1885 until World War II. Some were reportedly issued to military couriers. Following World War II, Harrington and Richardson only continued production of their break-top revolvers in .22 long rifle. Iver Johnson produced a number of centerfire double-action break-top revolver designs with their unique for the time Hammer the Hammer transfer bar safety system from 1887 through 1963. Budget models were marked under the name of U.S. Revolver Company. An excerpt from the 1897 Sears and Roebuck catalog shows their relative price ranges. Note, these prices are all for the .32 or .38 Smith & Wesson chambered break-top revolvers. Forehand and Wadsworth ranged in price from $270 to $470. Harrington and Richardson from $285 to $395. Hopkins and Allen from $260 to $490. Iver Johnson from $285 to $435. And Smith & Wesson from $995 to $13. As I mentioned, while these revolvers were generally chambered in .32 or .38 Smith & Wesson, some were chambered in .22 rimfire or even one of the .44 caliber cartridges. These interesting revolvers can still be found, often for reasonable prices, at gun shops, pawn shops, or online auctions. Millions were made, and a large percentage of them survived due to several factors. First, while they were carried frequently, they were rarely fired, and second, a majority of pocket pistols were chrome or nickel-plated, which protected against rust and corrosion even with black powder ammunition. Speaking of which, if there are plans to shoot one of these relics of times past, remember that most of them were designed for black powder pressure levels and the top latch design is not the strongest. Either buy preloaded black powder ammo or reload with black powder or smokeless powder held to black powder pressures. Trailboss powder was designed in part for this purpose. Another thing to keep in mind is that most of the spare parts for these pistols are in other pistols. While a qualified gunsmith may be able to determine if they're safe to shoot, that gunsmith may not be able to repair them without making the part needed. More than likely, the expense for doing this would be greater than the value of the firearm. Centerfire top-break pocket pistols are an interesting chapter in the development of cartridge firearms. Often despised and attacked by politicians of the day, they were the original Saturday Night Specials, these were the defenders that our grandparents and great-grandparents kept close by in case of need, and they still have a place in any collection. That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm also a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brenna Bock. That's BRENABOCK. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Oh, man. I always drool when I hear those vintage gun catalog prices. And then I realized back then, like a dollar a day was a decent pay for a day's work. And if you were a millionaire, you were insanely wealthy.
So, weirdly enough, because I didn't expect my brain to go down this route, but it was either today or yesterday, I saw on Facebook, they were talking about how in like I believe it was the 1938 filming of Robin Hood starring Errol Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know how to properly do the whole people getting shot with arrows, because special effects hadn't gone that far. So what they literally did was they hired professional archers using blunt-tipped arrows, and they literally shot the actors. And the actors got paid, I believe it was $150 each time they were hit, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in 1938 dollars, that's somewhere around $2,000.
Wow.
And hell, all right, you've got a professional, it's a blunt arrow, I'm going to get $2,000 per hit? Sure, I'll do that.
I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. And another thing that got me is for those that don't know, I'm a bit of a size queen and a recoil whore. I carry a 1911 and 45, and it's loaded with plus Ps. And we were just talking about if the Massachusetts magazine ban goes away, well, then I might actually upgrade my carry gun, because I can only carry essentially a 10-round magazine. So why not make them 10 really, really big rounds instead of 10 smaller rounds with lots of extra space? But man, I might be able to have some more capacity. And I'm seeing that Smith & Wesson M&P 10 millimeter. That's kind of calling to me. So we'll see where we go with that. But all that being said, I am just amazed at how weak many of the concealed carry guns from like the late 19th century, early 20th century was, with stuff like 25 auto. And then David was talking about the 32 Smith & Wesson, which makes like 32 ACP seem like a brick through a plate glass window. Oh, I actually got links in the show notes to 32 Smith & Wesson on just how it is a little tiny light bullet, and it is taking its sweet ass time to get to the target. But hey, guess what? Nobody wants to leak. So you pull out a gun and say, hey, I'm going to put a hole in you. It may not be much of a hole, but it'll be a hole, and it'll hurt the whole time I'm shooting you. You might go, all right, have a good day.
Yeah, that time in America was pretty odd, because I don't know if it was around that time or maybe it was a bit before, but they were marketing guns specifically for bicyclists to shoot at dogs who would apparently try to attack them as they rode by.
Yeah, the Smith & Wesson bicycle gun. Yeah.
Yeah, with the Velo Dog round or whatever, which, I mean, okay, no one wants to be bitten, and I don't know if these were wild dogs, strays, or if they were just, your normal dumb dogs. Oh, there's something moving, I want to chase it. If it's the former, and you're being attacked, I understand, but if it's just, a neighbor's dog is chasing you, shooting it is an overreaction.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the opinion of a dog lover.
Another anecdote about the 32 Smith & Wesson is
not another weird anecdote. Save us.
This was actually the round that did in President McKinley, and then he was shot, and the assassin shot twice at him before he was tackled, and the first shot actually hit a button and was deflected, and I read somewhere that it got caught in the fabric of his overcoat, but I wasn't able to confirm that. But the second one then punctured his stomach and wasn't itself fatal, but he did end up contracting gangrene, and in 1901 that was pretty much a death sentence. And then later, his vice president, who became president, Teddy Roosevelt,
I was about to ask.
Yeah, got shot with, I believe, a 38 Smith & Wesson, and that one went through a copy of his speech, and that slowed it down enough that he ended up surviving that one.
Well, more than that, Teddy Roosevelt was such a Chad that even though he was shot, he didn't go to the hospital. He ridiculed the shooter and finished his speech before seeking medical attention.
Mm-hmm. With a bullet in his lung. Like, it was not like it was just a flesh wound. No, the bullet actually punctured his lung, but he finished his speech.
I mean, medically speaking, that was very foolish, and he could have very easily died, but I really have to respect that level of commitment and the size and weight of his testicles.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who it was that said it. Maybe you remember it off the top of your head, but upon his passing, someone pointed out, of course, Teddy Roosevelt would have died in his sleep. The death wouldn't want to take him on face to face.
No, actually, I don't know that.
Yeah, but yeah, somebody mentioned the fact that Teddy Roosevelt died in his sleep because, yeah, if he was awake, he would have kicked death's ass.
His vice president, Thomas Marshall.
Okay. Well, that's even better.
Death had to take Roosevelt sleeping, for if he had been awake, there would have been a fight.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I had a history teacher in high school who had like one of the greatest history lessons ever, which was all the U.S. presidents in their prime battle royale, who would win. And of course, what was it? Harrison was the first one out, and I believe we had FDR was post polio.
Hang on. William Henry Harrison. He was the president who contracted pneumonia during his the speech he gives at his inauguration.
Correct.
And he died like within a month or so.
Yes.
Yeah, he had a weak constitution.
Yeah, shortest serving U.S. president and one of the longest inaugural speeches in pouring rain and snow. Not a wise move, but yeah. And so we would go through all the stuff, and I think it was just battle royale, and I think the finals were, I think, Andrew Jackson versus Teddy Roosevelt. Especially since both of them were well known for taking a bullet and going, because I mean, obviously we just talked about Roosevelt getting shot in the lung and then finishing his speech. And I believe it was Andrew Jackson was in a duel, and the other guy got the drop on him and shot him, and he took the hit, and the guy was essentially nodding his victory, and Jackson stood up and went, "I still got my bullet," and shot the guy dead. So yeah, that was a fun history exercise on who is the biggest Chad for American presidents.
Okay, that was his duel against Charles Dickinson in 1806.
Charles Dickinson clearly had great expectations for the duel.
Heyo!
I couldn't resist. I'm a dad.
Hi, Dad. I'm Aaron.
Damn you. Shifting gears from guns to prep, Xander gives us some of his independent thoughts on food storage.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. It's rather late for this segment submission, and coincidentally, I'm going to talk about late dates. Dates on food, that is. I've been going through some of the food supplies I bought when the world went a bit sideways back in 2020. Not much of it was truly non-perishable, as I found the hard way. Oatmeal bars, for example, can get nasty well past their printed best by date. I'd also misplaced an open box of pancake mix with the unopened storage, and discovered a new life form had grown on the surface of the unsealed stuff as the flour and fat was moistened by humidity. Prepping isn't just about buying once and forgetting about it. Earlier this year, I went through a box of MREs as I was doing field work for close to 14 hours a day and simply did not have time for the meal prep. Some of the packages had candy in them, like Reese's Pieces, licorice bites, and so on. Delicious stuff, normally. 10-year-old candy, however, gets seriously nasty, as opposed to the shelf-stable and otherwise preserved contents of the packets. Active inventory inspection and rotation will keep from discovering these problems the hard way in the worst possible times. Doing things like making sure there is a clear separation between actively used containers and stored and sealed ones will prevent a lot of waste and develop good habits. Clearly labeling various products with use by and inspect on dates will ensure that you can eat the food because you want to, not because you have to. Technically edible is not the best kind of edible, after all. In the midst of a disaster, good food you can look forward to enjoying really makes a difference in morale. Have fun, be safe, and I hope it gave you something to think about.
Yeah, the best food to store is food you're already eating. Just stock up a lot and then rotate through the stuff. And I will also say that while shelf-stable food is ideal for like ultimate survival, a chest freezer is amazing prep for more likely scenarios, because you may be in a situation where you will either have electricity or limited electricity for your disaster. You might be, say, snowed in, or roads may be impassable, or you may just lose your job and might need to hunker down a little bit for money.
Yeah, I really want to echo that. If you are in a disaster situation, your stress levels are high, and you want something that is comfortable. Now is not the time to start eating food you've never eaten before and you may hate. And that's if you're an adult. If you've got kids, especially kids when they're young enough to still be picky eaters, yeah, the last thing you want to do is try and get your children to eat the strange, icky food. Just lay in deep stores of the things you have, so long as they are either shelf stable or you can store them in a freezer, and that will do so much better than I've got a month's worth of MREs. Well, I don't know if you've eaten MREs. I have eaten MREs.
I have eaten MREs.
I do not choose to eat MREs. If I'm hungry enough, I will eat them. And I don't know, maybe in the time since I've eaten them, they've become somewhat palatable. But
I'm a bit of a trash panda, so every one I've had it's all right. But yeah, that's you've just sparked an interest in my mind. Is now I want to prep and serve 5 fingers of death to my daughter. Or is it 4 fingers of death?
Is.
The sausage and beans or whatever it is. It's the hot dog ones.
I still don't know what you mean.
Let's see. Six figures of death.
Okay. I just remember that when I was eating MREs, there were 2 rumors going around, and the rumors were, interestingly enough, contradictory. One of the rumors was that the MREs would give you constipation, so that you wouldn't have to poop during war. I mean, never mind all the health problems that goes with being backed up. The other is that they would act as a laxative, so that, again, you wouldn't have to worry about pooping. You would eat them and then you would poop. And it's like, I'm hearing this, like, guys, they can't be both. They can't both cause constipation and cure it. But yeah, that's the kind of weird stuff. Okay, the very first MRE I ever ate was in, I want to say 1991. And these were MREs that were older than that because they had gotten very close to their expiration dates and they were pawning it off onto us ROTC cadets. And I have never forgotten this, the very first MRE that I had, because it was exquisitely awful. I had a dehydrated pork patty, so I needed to soak it in a canteen cup in order to make it edible. And this last part is just, it's so fiendish. It was the diabolical cherry on top. The ketchup was powdered.
Ooh.
They couldn't give me regular ketchup in a plastic thing. No, it was in one of those little paper things, and it was powder, and I had to mix it myself. And it was like, you evil sons of bitches. So, I mean, in comparison, every other MRE I've eaten since then has been much better. But that one was just a specific flavor of terrible.
Yeah, so I just linked to the show notes. We Are the Mighty is the website, and it is the six rations troops are thankful the military got rid of, and they've got hilarious photographs of the first. Number one is the vegetable omelet, which I have actually had and I actually kind of enjoyed. But they have the picture of real life vegetable omelet, and there's a quite delectable looking vegetable omelet, and then the MRE life vegetable omelet, which is just a beige puck of protein,
AKA the vomlet.
Yeah, yes. And yeah, there's just a lot of just soupy, gloopy business, but you don't really look at it all that much because you're mostly eating it out of a bag with the magical MRE eating tool.
What, like a rock or something?
No, rock or something. No,
Thank you, you got it.
Yes. Prop it up with a rock or something. And there was, I'm trying to remember which YouTube channel. There was a YouTube channel that I found that did MREs, and they literally had like a cutting board titled "Rock" or something. It was engraved on it.
There's another guy, might have been the same guy, who films himself eating all sorts of old military rations.
Yeah, that's Steve 1980 something or other is his name, and he goes to the hospital frequently because of his YouTube channel.
Oh no!
But yeah, no,
it's a
different guy than him.
Are we talking like food poisoning?
I believe so. Yeah, he definitely opens up cans and be like, "Oh, this one's not so good," but he tries it anyway. And sometimes he wins, and sometimes he loses. And they're saying the buffalo chicken is one that they're glad they got rid of. I wonder, man, it's one of those. It's kind of hard to screw up buffalo chicken, but I don't know.
Oh, don't worry. The army can find a way.
Yeah, I guess so. And then the number 6 is the beef frankfurters. The nickname is the fingers of death. But I guess they don't make it anymore. So I don't feel like killing my daughter with vintage questionably stored MREs.
Wait until she's giving you a hard time. You might change your mind.
That day is today.
So we're going to pivot, but it's still prepper based. And I am very, very pleased, both because this is a return of a friend of mine, and also because, well, ACP bills itself as the podcast with a little bit for everyone, but for the longest time, it's been nothing but gun and 2A content. And so I am so proud to announce the return of the General Purpose Egghead when he talks about night vision. And it seems like this is going to be part of a series.
Hey everybody, it is the General Purpose Egghead back from the dead. I've been out of the podcasting game for a while, but I've gotten involved in a new hobby because, of course, I don't have enough expensive hobbies. And it's something I wanted to share with you guys. I think you'd find it interesting, and it kind of fits that techie/prepper niche pretty well, and that is night vision. So I've been getting into night vision optics. I've got myself a couple of monoculars, And I've been doing a little bit of research on the technology, and I think it's a really useful piece of gear. So I wanted to give you guys a rundown in a couple of segments. In this first segment, I wanted to cover an overview of the technology that goes into a night vision device and a little bit of the theory behind how they work. And then in future segments, we can talk about specific devices, how they're used, and any accessories you might need. So to get started, let's talk a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. So visible light is a particular range of wavelengths on the electromagnetic spectrum. And the electromagnetic spectrum covers everything from X-rays all the way down to radio waves. It's all exactly the same stuff. It's photons, basically. So above the visible range, at shorter wavelengths, we have ultraviolet. Then we have visible light going from violet all the way down to red in increasing wavelength. And then past red, we have infrared. So above violet, we have ultraviolet, and below red, we have infrared. Below infrared, you start getting into the microwave frequencies. So we can only see visible light spectrum, and now that's why we call it visible light. So with a night vision device, it does two things. One, it amplifies the number of photons, so it increases the brightness of any light that shows up in the tube. The other thing it does, which is extremely useful, is it increases the spectrum that you're able to see. It allows you to see into the infrared. So in addition to amplifying any existing light, it's pulling in different types of light that your eyeball can't naturally see. So that kind of 1-2 punch allows for really good performance in very low light. They're not magic. They still need some light present in order to function. And depending on the generation or just your lighting conditions, you might find that there are instances where even night vision doesn't do much to light up the area around you without some extra supplemental illumination. So that's the broad strokes of what night vision devices do. So let's talk a little bit about how they do it. The first step is gathering the photons that are coming in, right? You can think of them as particles of light. Whether they're a particle or a wave is a whole nother quantum physics conversation. But let's just call them particles of light for the purposes here. From front to back on a night vision device, you're going to have an objective lens, which is where the light comes into the device. In the middle, you're going to have an image intensifier tube, which is where almost all of the interesting stuff in a night vision device occur. That's what actually amplifies your light. You're going to have a power supply for that image intensifier tube. And then you're going to have an ocular lens on the back side, which focuses the output from the image intensifier onto your eyeball. There is one interesting thing about your objective lens that is a property of night vision that makes it a little bit difficult to use for some people. If you know anything about photography, you may have heard people talk about your aperture size when taking a photo. The larger the aperture, the larger the hole through which the light hits the film, the better light gathering you have, but you also get a shallower depth of field. And what depth of field means is it's the distance between the closest thing that's in focus and the furthest thing that's in focus. Naturally, if you're building night vision, you're going to want an extremely large aperture for the best light gathering, but that has the drawback of giving you an extremely shallow depth of field. So having an extremely shallow depth of field means that if I were to focus the night vision goggle to read a book in front of me, anything past that book would be extremely blurry, and anything closer than that book would be extremely blurry as well. So it's difficult to focus on things close in with night vision, because as soon as you do, you basically can't see anything else. So anything close in, so any weapon manipulation, anything like that, pretty much has to be done by feel, unless you have time to adjust the focus on your objective lens, and you're willing to sacrifice the ability to see anything further than about 3 feet in front of you until you get the chance to refocus. That's one of the reasons why it actually takes a decent amount of training to be able to use night vision effectively. But now let's get into the heart of the night vision device, which is the image intensifier tube. So the particles of light come into the objective lens. From there, they're directed onto the photocathode. And the photocathode is the first stage of a night vision device. And the first night vision devices that came out were not much more than a photocathode. What it does is it takes incoming photons, and when the photons hit the photocathode on the backside of it, it releases an electron. So more or less, it just converts photons, light, into electrons, which is a beam of electric current, more or less. The photocathode is responsible for a couple of the properties of night vision. It responds to more wavelengths of light than your eye will, so that's where you get your enhanced spectrum. And no matter what the wavelength of the light coming into the photocathode is, it just spits out an electron. So that's why you can't see color through night vision, because the photocathode responds the same way to a red photon as to a blue photon. Although it can be more sensitive to different colors of light than others, the end result is electrons coming out the back of it. So while you do get an enhanced spectrum response in the sense that you can see infrared, you lose the ability to differentiate within that spectrum, right? You can't see color anymore. So after the electrons leave the photocathode, the next stage is the microchannel plate. Now, the microchannel plate is visually, it looks like a honeycomb, but it's on a microscopic scale. Each of the little openings in the honeycomb is extremely small. And what that does is when an electron hits the side of the microchannel plate is electrically charged, and multiple electrons are released every time one electron hits the side of the plate. So an electron comes in, it hits the side of the microchannel plate inside one of those tubes, and like 10 or 100 or 1,000 electrons are released. Those keep going down the tube, they'll hit the side again, they'll release another 10 or 100 for every individual electron, and it just multiplies all the way down. And on the back end of your microchannel plate, you can get one electron coming into the front and thousands coming out the back. That is what gets you your amplification of the light. So at the end of the microchannel plate, you have a greatly increased number of electrons coming out. And then what they do is they hit a phosphor screen. And this phosphor screen is what turns them back into visible light that your eye can see. And this is why when you look through night vision, you see a different color. So it's the color of the phosphor screen that you're seeing. Usually it's, with the old school stuff, it would be green. Newer ones are different colors, kind of a bluish color or a whitish color. But that's why you don't see color in night vision, is because it's coming through the phosphor screen that's turning it into light. So to review, you have photons come in the front, they hit the photocathode, where they get turned into electrons. They go through the microchannel plate, where those electrons are multiplied every time they hit the side of the microchannel plate. And then all of those extra electrons hit the phosphor screen, where they're converted back into visible light that your eye can see. And that's the process by which an image intensifier tube inside a night vision device will amplify the visible light. There are a couple of different generations of night vision tube. Gen 1 is the first generation of night vision, and it came out pretty early. They actually had Gen 1 night vision in World War II. It was huge, it was bulky, and it didn't work very well, but it did allow you to see in the dark. If you ever want to laugh, Google some of the Gen 1 night vision tools that they had in World War II. They're pretty comical looking. Gen 1 did not have a microchannel plate. All it had was the photocathode and the phosphor screen. So you didn't really get a lot of amplification, but you still got the increased spectrum. So they would have big infrared illuminators, basically giant invisible light flashlights that you couldn't see with the naked eye, but with these night vision devices, you could. So it was basically pointing a flashlight that nobody else could see. Now the flashlight was, again, massive, and there was some really funny headgear that they had for it, but it did work, mostly. Gen 2, I think, is where things get really interesting. That's where the microchannel plate was added, and you can start to get some pretty good performance with Gen 2 devices. If you've watched Ghostbusters, the goggles that they use there are actually a modified set of PVS-5 night vision goggles, which is Gen 2 night vision. And then there's Gen 3. Gen 3 is the latest and greatest night vision technology, more or less. The difference there is the Gen 2 photocathode is a multi-alkali photocathode. It's a particular type of chemistry. And Gen 3 uses gallium arsenide. The difference between those is a little bit above my head, but basically gallium arsenide is a little bit more sensitive. The multi-alkali, because of the way the components are constructed, it's a little bit more durable to like shock and vibration, but Gen 3 just gives you better performance. Within Gen 3, you also have two different categories. You have thin film and unfilmed. What's going on there is that there is a film of chemicals that's put on the back of the phosphor screen to stop ions from going back towards the photocathode. That's actually what causes night vision devices to wear out and die, is ion poisoning. You have ions that come back off of the phosphor screen and damage the photocathode. So originally there was a rather thick film of these chemicals to stop those ions from coming back. It would reduce the performance of the device. It would stop some of those electrons from getting converted into photons, but it was necessary for longevity, right? With Gen 3, better manufacturing methods, they were able to go to a thin film, and these were the standard for a long time, and they still kind of are. The rank and file normal night vision tubes are thin filmed. Now, unfilmed is the cream of the crop, and these unfilmed tubes can perform better in extreme low light than thin film will. Unfilmed tubes still have great service life, but they have the increased low light performance that comes from not having as much of a film on the back of them. If you hear someone refer to a night vision tube as Gen 4, they're probably talking about an unfilmed tube, although that's still Generation 3 technology. Gen 4 is more of a marketing term than an actual technical distinction. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is a protection device that's built into some of the newer night vision tubes. Now, one of the things that can kill your night vision tubes is exposing them to bright light. If too much light comes into your night vision tube, it'll draw too much electrical current and basically burn itself out. And then you end up with these dark spots or streaks across your field of view where certain portions of the night vision tube have been burnt out. In order to prevent this, modern tubes have a feature called auto-gating. When the night vision tube is exposed to bright light, it will draw a little bit more electrical current. The auto-gating system senses this and clamps down on the amount of current that it'll provide to the tube, which reduces the brightness of the tube, but also saves it from damage. It doesn't make the device completely light-proof. It's still not going to stand up to severe abuse, but if somebody shines a flashlight in your face or you walk into a bright room, it's not going to instantly damage your night vision. When auto-gating kicks in, you can hear a whining sound as the power supply chokes off the amount of current, and that's what gives you that classic video game night vision whine. And speaking of video games and night vision in popular culture, there's this kind of trope that if someone is wearing night vision goggles and you shine a light in their face, it'll just completely blind them. It doesn't really work that way. Your night vision device is not capable of putting out enough light to actually damage your eyes. It would be a little bit like saying, I can send you a YouTube video that gets so bright that it'll blind you. Your phone just can't get that bright. It's just not going to happen. And the night vision tube itself, assuming it hasn't been damaged by the light, as soon as you take the light away, it'll be able to see normally. You can get a little bit of temporary black shadowing, like temporary blemishes on the tube, but it's not going to be enough to say that you've really blinded somebody. Now, when you're having a light shown in your face, with or without night vision, it is really hard to see what's behind it. So there's a little bit of truth to it, but it's not going to blind anybody. And arguably, I'd rather have a bright light shown in my face with night vision than without, because without it, I would ruin my natural dark adapted vision, and I would be blind for a little bit, but with the night vision, as soon as you take the light away, your gain comes right back, and you can see more or less normally. That about wraps up this segment. A little bit longer than usual, but I hope you found it useful. And in the next segment, we will talk a little bit about the specifications and ratings that they give to different night vision tubes, to help you pick out your first tube and make sure you're getting the kind of performance that you want.
Oh man, old school Starlight scopes were huge. Like, the kind of telescopes you have on tripods, huge, just big lenses.
Yeah, was it the M3 carbine that was supposed to be like a short range night vision sniper rifle or designated marksman gun that just had like that massive like lamp on it with the night vision scope?
I actually don't know. Look, I'm just here because I'm cute. I know very, very little about guns, especially compared to you.
Yes, it was the M3. Look at that monstrosity.
Yeah.
Not only does it have like a scope that is probably doubles the weight of the very svelte M1 carbine, but it's got a kludged on like foregrip so that it can do all the controls. It's got the massive illuminator lamp on the top and then just a gossamer of wires.
And I have to assume that cone at the end is a flash hider.
Yes, it is. That is a conical flash hider, of which I tell Oddball to 3D print a whole bunch of them, then put them on the ends of all his guns. And he has yet to take me up on it. Because everything needs a conical flash hider, because they're hilarious.
If it was good enough for Han Solo, it's good enough for you.
That's correct. Yeah, I don't think the M3 carbine, hence Aaron's getting stumped by my question. They did not see a whole lot of use because, yeah, the M1 carbine was designed to be very, very svelte and light and handy. And this takes all of that and ruins it. Very similar to the AR-15s or M4s that have just got piles and piles of crap hanging off of them.
Yeah, let's take this really, really slim portable rifle and add 13 pounds of crap to it.
Yeah, Jake's invited me up to his place to test him out, and I just haven't had a chance to take him up on the offer. I am actually super duper curious, especially while he talks about he's got a bunch of monocular ones, which means he says you trip over like every root and stick that's on the ground because you have no depth perception.
I haven't been invited.
Well, I also live like a short drive from him.
I don't care. Haven't been invited.
Well, guess what? He'll invite you. He's the sweetest guy to ever live.
He'd better. Otherwise, he's a poopy head.
That's right. You hear that? You hear that, Egghead? Aaron has to come over, and we'll all make a party of it. It'll be Egghead Fest. We'll have a con.
Egg Fest 2022.
Have a con at Egghead.
Sunday.
You paid for your whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I think we've been silly enough.
Okay, I'm going to do one last bit of... This is actually relevant. And actually touches on that color discussion we had earlier. The reason why... I don't remember which generation it was, but that particular generation of night vision was green, as opposed to other colors, is because... Now, this is what I've heard. I haven't done research. I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that the human eye can distinguish shades of green better than any other color, and that goes back to prehistory when we were hunter-gatherers, and it was very necessary to determine the subtle variations in shading so that we would know whether or not a plant was safe to eat. And so that's why they chose green, because we could more easily differentiate the shadings. And so, well, if you're restricted to one color and you need to be able to see what's going on, pick the one that the eye's best at.
I mean, that's certainly true, and that's the reason why green lasers are so much more of the high dollar thing, because a red laser on a sunny day is practically invisible.
Bye bye.
But yeah, but a green laser you can still see very, very clearly, even in quite bright sun. Probably number one, because the green lasers are far more intense as well. They burn through battery power and all that, but you get what you pay for, and that is a much more intense and easy to pick up laser. I will have to say that there was a very, very poor performing video game system in the late 1990s that was produced by Nintendo known as the Virtual Boy. I don't know if you've heard about this, Aaron.
That is the extent of my knowledge. I have heard of it.
Yes.
It existed.
It was one of the first 3D video game systems out there. It was an Oculus Rift before there was an Oculus Rift. And it essentially was a semi-portable system. It sat on it looked actually like a big set of goggles, but it sat on a tripod, and it was fairly heavy. But you could run it off of a battery pack, so it was portable.
Yeah, I like that hesitation you put on. It was portable.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically speaking.
But Nintendo had, when they originally started designing it, they had planned to make it full color, and they found that the full color LED screens that they needed to make this compact dual screen video game system just made the price go from, I think it was originally like $250 in like 1995 money or 1996 money. And so they found that like it was like double that with color screens. So they made it monochrome, and it was red on black. And let me tell you, after a decent amount of playing with that, you pulled your head out, and I actually kept it in my at the time when I bought it. I didn't buy it new. It was all the stores got them, and they held on to them for a while, and then somewhere around I think it was around 1997, all the stores just went, these aren't going anywhere, and they liquidated the whole thing. And I bought the console for, I want to say $50, and they were selling the games for $10 a whack. And so there was like 5 or 6 games that got produced for it. The only one I didn't get was Waterworld, which was produced in extremely low numbers.
Hang on, they made a game based on the Kevin Costner movie?
They did. It did look like a good one. I've only seen it in like screenshots, and I think there's someone on YouTube doing a playthrough of it, which of course you don't get the 3D. But yeah, that was the only one that I wasn't able to find. And there might have been a soccer game that I just went, no, I'm an American. But yeah, so I bought the console and every game for it that I cared about for $100, which seemed pretty worthwhile to me. But boy, I used to play it in my room in my parents' basement. And so it's a dark basement, and I would pull my head out of it, and just the ambient light in that basement was blinding because red just is, for those that are hunters or do any sort of low light work or work in a dark room, red light doesn't mess with your night vision and won't like expose film and things like that. And so yeah, your pupils would just be fully dilated and just be like, oh, the light, it burns. So yes, green is better.
Green is better. But you know what's best, Weer'd? Our patrons.
Yes. Well, I thank all of our listeners, because let's face it, you don't need to pay money to listen to this podcast, and that's fine. I'm not guilt tripping you. I'm not saying you have to support us. But our lovely supporters on Patreon do support us, and we appreciate their support. But they're not just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. If they go to Assorted Calibers podcast, or they go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast, and they sign up, and they get stuff. They get early releases of the podcast. They get our blooper reels, which are a hoot. And they get the ACP film tracks, where you get to watch movies with the various members of ACP. Aaron says ruin. I say improve. And there's the ACP Mag Dump, which is our off-topic show.
You say that as if we are strictly on topic everywhere else, and we're not.
We totally are. This is tight.
Point.
If you like these shenanigans, there's far more of them in the Mag Dump.
Everyone involved in the production, except for me, has ADD or ADHD, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm not high functional as well, because I've got a little bit of it. But see, on the other hand, I don't have the caffeine doesn't make me sleepy, which is apparently like one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Caffeine wakes me up, but I peg so many of the others. It's so weird. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off.
I got a blog. It's called WeirDWorlds.com, and you can hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me when, of course, I'm feeling well and not having a week full of headaches at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Well, I'm cute as a button, and Weer'd rambles and is annoying. Our personalities are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
I resemble those remarks. Good night.